message. Here we go.
Oh, yeah, there we go. All right. Well, thank you all for joining the INCOSE Washington Metropolitan Area Monthly Chapter Meeting. My name is Dr. LaWanda Studevant, and I am the president for the chapter. We're going to have a few administrative updates, and then we will go into our presentation. And tonight we will be hearing from Nathan Scott as he presents an overview and understanding of CMMC. Just a few housekeeping tips. If you could please let us know in the chat if you are new to our meeting. Please also mute your phone so that we will only have one open mic as the meeting progresses. And then please utilize the chat for a networking opportunity by exchanging your business information and so forth in the chat. This is our agenda for the evening. I will give you a few updates and information. We will also hear from each of our committee chairs who will report out on their areas. And as I mentioned before, we will have a presentation from Nathan Scott, who is from Queen Consulting and Technologies Incorporation, and he will present on overview and understanding of CMMC. And then we will end with a few next steps for our chapter. All right, so with regards to what has been happening from my vantage point, we have a couple of members from our chapter who took advantage of the presentation we had last month from David Long, who talked to us about Technical Leadership Institute. And there's a new cohort that is starting very shortly. And we've had a couple of participants that have submitted application to request to be a part of that cohort. So we are looking forward to hearing back from them as they progress through TLI. I continue to work with the Circle Award Working Group as we are looking at various ways to refine the Circle Award process and make achieving points easier. And we have also lowered the bar just a tad to encourage others to get more involved and submit to let us all know the wonderful activities that they have been doing in their chapters. And so the next item I would like to share with you is that we are continuing to collaborate with with a Texas chapter on getting CEP certification prep courses ready for you. And the portion that I want to highlight tonight is that we do need a few presenters that are willing to present just on these segments that I have here in this chart. The materials will be using the INCOSE CBOC handbook, and these are the dates that we're looking: August 5th, 6th, August 12th and 13th, and August 19th to present on these sections that you see here. Sections 3.1, 3.2, 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3. So you'll have materials available. The instructors need to be CEP certified themselves to be eligible to teach the courses. So please let me know if you are available and would like to use this opportunity to share and help others to earn their CEP certification. Please send me an email at president@incosewma.net. And then moving on, we are also continuing to collaborate with other INCOSE chapters and also increasing our outreach. And so with that, I will introduce you to the board. If you have not seen the list of our membership, not our membership, but our board, these are the members of the WMA Board of Directors. And We have 3 student chapters: George Mason University, and this is their board list of board members. Also, Virginia Tech and George Washington University. So if you know of students that attend these schools, feel free to reach out to them and encourage them to join the student chapters at their respective schools. And then I will now turn this over to our membership chair to welcome our, oops, wait a minute, went too far. I'm sorry, Dr. Burley, are you on the call?
I am here. Thank you, Dr. Studevant. Good evening, everyone. As you can see, we are welcoming our new members that joined as of March 2025. I won't walk through all of the individuals, so just take a moment to say hello and do a virtual welcome to these individuals.
Thank you. And if you're on the call, any of you on the call, feel free to let us know by the chat. We greatly appreciate it. Love to say hello. Dr. Burley?
I'm sorry, I was responding to someone in the chat.
Sorry.
For 2025, these are our new SCP certifications. Again, we have expert systems engineering professionals, ESEPs. We have 2 individuals that got their certifications. Certified systems engineering professional, the CSEP, we have 3, and then a host of individuals who received their associated systems engineering professional ASEP certification. So again, you can give them a round of virtual applause for their accomplishments.
Excellent. Congratulations to all. All right, moving on to our ambassador chair, Dr. Tika Raj.
Thank you, Madam President. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Dr. Tika Rai, chair of the Ambassador Committee. And I just joined as the chair just recently, and I'm really excited to report something, today. And Luanda, my slide is the one next after this one.
Okay. So just wanted to share for the benefit of the rest of the membership that we were fortunate enough to have a dinner meeting with Steve Records, who is the INCOSE executive director for I call it the upper level of INCOSE, last month. And we had a wonderful conversation. Our past president, Gary Thomas, Bill Scheibel, one of our director at large, and myself, we chatted with Mr. Records, and we shared with him several ideas, but probably the one with the most weight to it, and I'll let Gary speak to it if he is available, regarding seeking out the government and providing a systems engineering job series.
Thank
Gary,
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry, everybody, if the communication is coming in a little bit broken on my way home from work.
You sound great.
Okay, great. One thing that we have that there's one open issue that we've been working on for quite some time is that system engineers do not have a federal job series. The Office of Personnel Management, OPM, they do not have a job series dedicated to system engineering, and we want to change that. Right now, all system engineers are lumped into usually the general engineering job series, which is 0801. And so what we're trying to do, we've talked with our brothers and sisters at the Americas sector, and we've even spoken to the president of INCOSE. He thinks this is a worthwhile task for our chapter WMA to champion. So when our executive director of INCOSE was in town, we took advantage of that to say, hey, let's get together, let's talk a little about a few things. And so the main topic of discussion that night was, how do we move forward in trying to effectively lobby and get to a single voice. One of INCOSE's main jobs right now is to try to speak with one voice as a system engineering community, and we think this is a good opportunity. Now, so that's that topic. The other topic that we unfortunately did not get to with Steve Records is doing a campaign with the Koreans to help either establish their chapter or to work with them. And our Vice President, Dr. Sean Na, is going to be leading that effort up with our chapter in the future. I don't know if Dr. Na wants to talk a little bit about that. Over.
Hi, Gary. This is Sean, and I did send a follow-up message to Steve due to the personal emergency that I wasn't able to make that meeting. So just waiting for follow-up with Steve so that we can chat further about that chapter inquiry. Over.
All right, so I see Bill Scheibel is also on the call and was there at this meeting. Did you want to add anything that perhaps we've left out, Bill?
No, I think that was good coverage from both of them. It was a good discussion over a lot of different topics. And another takeaway was that INCOSE is working very hard to adapt to the 21st century, a different organization, and we've got a lot of good things happening over the next couple of months. So it was a good dinner, and we got INCOSE to pay. So what can you say, right? There we go. So that's about all. I think both Gary and Dr. Nuss have covered it well. Over.
Yeah. So it was very nice of Mr. Richards to pay for dinner for us. That was very kind and unexpected, at least from my angle. So I was about to say that one of the things that also came up was that there are some companies that do look for SEP certified individuals when they're seeking to hire systems engineers. And so that was very nice to hear that in the realm of systems engineering, the certifications are being sought after. So I'm planning to move that up on my list of to-dos to get my SEP certification as well.
Yeah, Lawanda, this is Bill again. Maybe we should look back just a little bit for the members to get a better understanding of what we were trying to accomplish with Steve and with Gary's idea of getting job classification for systems engineers. We tried for many years in INCOSE, or at least around a WMA chapter in particular, a little bit with the Chesapeake chapter, to try and get the acquisition people to recognize and to be able to put in to bids and RFIs that they would like contractors that had a SEP or a CSEP or an ASEP rating. We tried this for a couple of different years, trying to figure out how we could get the government to include our certifications in as part of the purchasing or acquisition process, and the general consulting practice, because most of our members, or many of our members, are consultants to the government. That didn't fly. It was a bridge too far. We did have an acquisition specialty for a while. That has since expired, although I heard it may come back. But the whole idea is the chapter's been working for many years trying to figure out how we can get the federal government to acknowledge, recognize, and, if you will, request people with CSEPs, ASEPs, when they are asking for systems engineers. So I just want to throw a little bit of history in there. This is something that I think Gary's idea is the best we've gone with so far, and that's trying to get a job classification. It would make life really easy versus trying to get them to add stuff into their contracts. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Bill. Always a wealth of information. All right, so we will now move on to the Ambassador Chair. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Luana, and thank you everyone for speaking to the earlier slide and going forward, right? So any kind of directions or contributions from the Ambassador Committee, I'm up for that. So thank you. And I was saying earlier, so I'm truly excited to share what's happened so far, although I just joined the committee just recently. And first, thank you, Luanda, for your time last week, because I have started to scratch the surface as to what we can do potentially. And the backstory is that, this committee has been relatively dormant, and my vision here to how I start and where I take it with, of course, collaboration of the leaders in INCOSE WMA and make it a vibrant one, So with that in mind, if you look at the slide and particularly on the right side, you see 4 boxes and there's arrows flowing down and there's a loop back to the, from the last one to the first one. So my thinking goes, in following ways. First is for the INCOSE WMA. I know we have stated something in our website aligning to that, so what is the value propositions or the benefits for a potential member and the existing members? And that is the why question, right? And also remap the target members that we have already, in our thinking. But is there anything missing? Is there anything new that we can think of? But mainly, we have the individual members, including the students, and then we have CABs and also academic institutions, right? So revisit that to map out these different target audiences. And the how piece, right? So I know in our board meeting last month, we touched on potentially doing an orientation program for new members, for example, so that's something I would love to revisit or talk to with some of the other community leaders. And that's why I put some committee names, right? So membership, ambassador, which is me, and the communications, for example. And the last box talks to, once we have members joining us, how we can make sure, the benefits that we promise is delivered so that, engagement is optimal and the retention is as high as we can make it, right? And for that is the limited list, of the folks that listed on the right side of that box. But I can start with, a few folks here, Mary, Ruchira, Kathleen, and Paul to start with. And then the loop goes back to the first box, right, which is to refine and update our actions, strategies to continually, refine and get better at it. So that's the overall thinking, like sort of a roadmap for me to, start laying out the actions and execute on them. Now, if we can move to the left side of the slide, these are sort of a low-hanging fruits kind of thing. And this is where I need everyone's support and help. So Luanda, when we spoke last week, right? So some of the local cab reps, 3 namely, which are already listed there. An introduction from you would be a first step for me to start engaging, right? Getting to know and how we can support the membership. And the next one is academic institutions. UMD, Howard University, and Morgan State. Luanda, you mentioned that you have already communicated with the School of Engineering there, except for Johns Hopkins, right? That's something I can start. Or if someone knows someone there or someone has already communicated, let me know. So what I'm trying to do here is basically putting all the dots on the board, if I may, right? Or the radar, even, So I know who to follow up, start engagement in parallel to what I spoke to earlier on the right side of the column, with the 4 boxes and the loop. And we have also, of course, student chapters, GMU, VT, and GWU, and any kind of introduction would be great for me too, so I can start communicating with them. And the purpose is to, saying hi is one thing, but from the ambassador committee, how we can liaise, coordinate, create synergy, among other committees to really support our members there. And one additional question is for Bill. I know you already mentioned this chapter as well, Chesapeake chapter. And if you happen to know the ambassador chair there, an introduction would be a huge help for me. And on the bottom, you see, the quarterly kind of arrows, right? So what I'm trying to say there is if you look at Q2, which we're already in, starting, me this month and end of next month. So my proposal to the board is that I would collaborate with some of the leaders and come up with a plan, right, of some sort. What are the goals? What are the objectives, and how do we get to that, right? So I look forward to that day or that month or that time to share with you the sort of a vision of this committee, and would love to get your inputs and how I can refine that and collaborate to execute them, and particularly, the value propositions, benefits, orientation program, and the strategy around retention would be the focus of that. And that's the plan. Madam President, back to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You've put a lot of thought in what you presented here. And so I am delighted and anxious to see where we go from here with regards to all of the different organizations and schools that we are able to reach out, and other chapters that we can reach out to and, as you say, build synergy. So I look forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. Now moving on to the communications chair.
Thanks, Luanda. So as I've been taking over the reins as the communications chair this year, I've been going through our various communications methods and mechanisms and doing updates and trying to expand our reach. As I do that every month or so, I'm going to try and bring some information to the general chapter here. This month, what I wanted to do is just give a little highlights and a tour of our website. So you see the link there to the website, and at the top of it, you'll have the menu bar. Coming from on the home page is the latest news and events that are INCOSE WMA chapter or INCOSE Central specific. I tend to update that page about weekly or as needed. So as new events are popping up, they get added. As we announce a new membership event or the next month's registration for the chapter meeting, it goes up there. After this meeting, when I post the recording to our YouTube channel, it'll get posted on the front page. The Meet the Team page gets updated whenever we have a change in our board of directors, but you can go to that page to see who the board is, the pictures of each of them and their contact information. The events tab is for more general events. Those are for our specific events, and they have the details behind them. So you'll see just a glossy on the home page, and then if you click on the event tab, you'll see the bios and details against all the different briefings or events that we're going to have. The newsletters tab is updated quarterly. That has a link to our latest newsletter, and we released that on Saturday. I think I published it, thanks to Nalini and the team. So you'll see a link to the first quarter 2025 newsletter there on that page now. On the other news tab, it's other news and events that either are tie closely with INCOSE or other certification or systems engineering groups that have similar conferences and events that are upcoming. So whether it's a chapter that we're partnering with and their monthly chapter meeting, or an OMG meeting that's coming up, or some other conference, you'll find interesting events located on that tab. On the membership and the certifications tab, they get updated monthly with the newest members that have joined our chapter during that month, and then who's recently received CEP certifications. And then always at the top right, you'll see a link to the main INCOSE page. On the next slide, at the bottom of the page, you'll see links for general chapter queries. So contact at incosewma.org. And whenever you send an email to that address, it goes to myself, Luanda, and Sean. And then you'll see the string of social medias that we have access to. So we have a Facebook group, we have a X Twitter feed, LinkedIn group, YouTube channel, and I just created Instagram feed, which the Q1 membership event at Wolf Trap, you'll see pictures from that event on our Instagram feed now. And throughout the year, I'll see if I can add a few more streams out there for us.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. This is fantastic. All right, so we will now move on to our newsletter editor, Nalini.
Hello, everyone. So we published the first edition, first of 4 newsletters for the year. We got together a lot of content, thanks to all the contributors. We're still transitioning from the old style, very verbose newsletter to targeted, a shorter newsletter with links out to detailed articles elsewhere. So this is in the process of transition, so we'll work the next steps towards the end goal. We did slip a few days. We went into April, push the button on publishing. Hopefully next time we can start on time and get the input soon enough so we can publish on time. So the schedule for the next newsletter, if you can please move to the next slide. Yeah, so we'll start collecting inputs. Obviously, you can send them earlier, but at least by the end of May, if you can have all the inputs in, we can get going with the next steps and publish towards the middle of June.
All right. So
Yeah,
feel
so-
free to send, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yep, that's all I have. Thank you.
And as is mentioned here at the bottom, any systems engineering related articles, please send to Nalini. There's his email address. We appreciate all of the support. Thank you so much. And then in terms of our upcoming meetings and presenters, Ruchira, are you on the line? If not, here is a listing of our presenters for the first half of the year. Feel free to make note, and if you know of someone that has a systems engineering topic, feel free to forward that to us. We greatly appreciate it. Moving on to events, our events committee chair, Kathleen Flynn.
Good evening. Thanks, Dr. Studevant. So at the end of March, Saturday, March 29th, we had a really engaging and interesting backstage tour of the Filing Center at Wolf Trap National Park for the Performing Arts. And Park Ranger Will was our tour guide. He led us on a journey through the center where we learned about the history of the center and the history of the land. We looked at behind the scenes spaces, some very complex systems that are used to enable performances at the center, like the scenery, docking, movement, and storage systems. I think the most interesting were the rigging and fly line equipment. It was super cool to see how the stage is assembled and prepared for a show, as well as the artist green rooms and lounge spaces. So really appreciate everyone who took the time to come out for the tour. It definitely gave us a neat perspective on all of the systems, from the personnel, the people, sound and lighting and staging that go into putting on a performance. So looking forward to our Q2 event, we're going to go on a group visit to the National Museum of the United States Army. This is a special year for the Army. They're celebrating their 250th anniversary. And the museum is opening up a new exhibit specifically for this anniversary year. They have engaging displays, exhibits, interactive simulations. All ages are welcome. Civilians and veterans alike. It's going to be a really interesting look at one of our armed force services. And INCOSE will also be sponsoring lunch at the event for attendees. We're going to be meeting at 11 a.m. on Saturday, June 28th. I have a sign-up form, which I'll put the link in the chat too, and I hope to see you there. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Sounds
awesome. Yeah, it should be neat. As always, if anyone has any event ideas, suggestions, or would like to help plan and lead an event, please reach out to me. My email is listed there on the slide. So, thank you. Back over to you, Dr. Studevant.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm always excited when I see the events that you plan. They're always very interesting. Moving on now to Dr. Sue and our connection by way of Dr. Sue with PMI. Dr. Sue, over to you.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Madam President. With regard to PMSC collaboration activities with PMI WC, we have inside the professional development program some experiential learning initiatives, and those are listed in front of you. Next slide, please. And so this is a interesting workshop that we will be sponsoring. Basically, it is a review of the PMI processes, and then a workshop to go and apply what is taught to doing something. And that something is going to be a home improvement remodeling project of one sort or another. And so this is where you transition from the academics to the hands-on. The groups will work as a team, develop some solutions and present it to each other. And that should be an interesting interactive event. It's scheduled for the 17th and 18th of May. We will publish information on that as it comes closer, and I will get it out to our website. And thank you, Paul, for doing that so that members will be able to access it. The only limitation here is that it's limited to 15 participants because of the workshop type activities. There'll be some charge associated with it to be determined, and you do not have to be a PMI WC member to attend. Next slide, please. So the next program that we have initiated is a community practice. Discussed a little bit about this last time, but essentially the community practice is a group where people want to join, and they work together to learn something and to do something. And so the elements are, you got to have some area of interest, you got people who want to participate, and then you have a moderator who will provide the structure and facilitate the learning. Next slide, please. So we have two community practices on the books. The first one is fundamentals and applications of system thinking and project management. It's scheduled for the 23rd of April, and Dr. Ra is going to be the moderator. So the link to that particular registration is shown right there. You click on it, you can register. You do not have to be a member to attend, and it is free. Next slide, please.
This is your last.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I got confused. Okay, so we have another community of practice, this program management systems engineering collaboration. It's in development. We have one of our colleagues over at PMI WC who is a PM. He's also an engineer, and he is in his company. They do a teaming arrangement between a manager and a technical person, and if it's something that has worked very well for them, and he is wanting to go and put together a community practice to see if they can spread that particular common practice among all of us. And so more to follow on that. And that concludes what I have to present.
Hey, thank you so much. And so I'm going to copy this link and put it in the chat, this information, so people will have it handy. And so the next item on our agenda is the presentation from Nathan Scott. Mr. Scott, are you on the line?
Yes, hello.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry about the
So
delay.
just-
I had to find the Zoom button.
Oh, I know how that is. And so I have here the your bio. Mr. Scott is a CMMC registered practitioner, a CMMC certified professional, and certified project management professional. With over 20 years of experience in the IT industry, Mr. Scott has a proven track record in both the private and public sectors and has spent several years as a leader and manager for a software development company contracting for Department of Health and Human Services, and was the compliance specialist responsible for NIST 853 system audits on multiple contracts and systems. Nathan founded Queen Consulting and Technologies in 2015 to bring expertise and knowledge of IT security, compliance management, and cost-effective solutions to government contractors and private sector businesses in need of advanced business security and management. So we look forward to hearing from you regarding cybersecurity maturity model certification. I'll turn the floor and the screen over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Luanda. Appreciate it. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to this amazing group of people tonight.
Excellent. Thank you.
Let me see if I can share my screen here. All right. Am I transmitting to everyone?
Yes, I can see your screen. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And just to do a quick time check, how much allotted time am I given to speak tonight?
Did you hear the question?
Usually run till 8.
Run till
Oh, I'm
8?
sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm talking into mute. Yes.
No worries, no worries. I can talk about this all day, so please cut me off if we're getting close to that point, all right? So,
Okay.
thank you. As Dr. Luanda mentioned, I'm Nathan, founder of Queen Consulting, and I'm very happy to be with you all tonight. I've been in the compliance ecosystem and cybersecurity space for going on 15 years professionally, and there's a lot of interesting stories I could share. I'm curious if I could get some interaction with the audience tonight. Could I just see in Zoom a show of hands who has heard of CMMC before? Okay, I got a thumbs up from Mr. Miller. Anyone else? Is this okay? Michelle, thank you. Okay, yeah, so we have a number of folks who've heard of this before. So for the rest of y'all, I hopefully will enlighten you somewhat and not scare you away is my goal. And by the end, you'll understand a little bit about what the program is for, is my objective. Let me do a little bit about my company. So we are specialists for government contractors to help them grow and scale and provide cybersecurity, compliance advisory, and end-to-end IT support for their business. Coming from a contractor background myself, that gives us a little bit of an understanding of the unique challenges that government contractors face. And we are now actually 10 years in business. I need to update this slide as of March. So I'm very, very grateful for the journey so far. It's been a learning experience running a company and growing it. And so here we are tonight to talk about CMMC. So where did this all start? Actually began back in 2010, officially, I would say, is where we can trace the direct trend from the Office of the President, who put in an executive order to start securing what he termed controlled unclassified information. That's going to be an important term tonight as we go through this overview. Or CUI is another way you'll see it, or CUI. Some people will say CUI. I prefer CUI, but that's what it stands for. And what does that mean? Well, the situation at that time was federal agencies had numerous variant ways of classifying data. You can imagine different departments, and within those departments, different agencies all having their own particular way of categorizing data and security of that data. What this led to was a lot of acronyms and a lot of confusion. I will try to keep acronyms to a minimum tonight, but just know this was a big push to try and streamline and standardize how we talk about securing data in the government. So this is a chart, and I'm starting here with the data because this whole system, this whole program, all of this compliance, what is this all about? It's ultimately about protecting stuff. And so what are we trying to protect? And this is a high-level view of unclassified all the way up to classified in a sort of streamlined way. And if this seems a little overwhelming, imagine what it must have been like when you had hundreds of different tabs. What I want to call your attention to on the left is the green unclassified. And so we have things that are called public release. It's for anybody and everybody. We have what's called FCI, federal contract information. It's not intended for public release, but neither is it hard to come by if you go on a government website or a contract award. A lot of this information is out there. And then we have uncontrolled, unclassified information. It's kind of in limbo. That brings us into the purple, CUI. This is information that does need special handling, but it's not top secret or confidential. It's somewhere in the middle. And that's where this program came to be, is they needed to have a way of understanding this data and protecting this kind of data. And then you've all heard of confidential, secret, and top secret before, and that's not my specialty area, and I don't have a clearance. I'm not really an expert at all in that. But just a step below that is the things that if you got enough pieces of the information, you could put together possibly enough information to either assemble more confidential data or gain access to the people who do. And so we need special safeguarding around that CUI, controlled unclassified information. And my slide, President put this in 2010. This program is just now starting to take effect. As of December, it was put into law. So this has been a long, long time in the making. Things take time in the government, but we are now at a point where we have an understanding and we have the buy-in and support. And even in the current administration, we have an understanding that this program is a priority. Katie Arrington, who was appointed and put in charge of this program initially, has been reappointed and went right away to DOJ and asked them, is this going to be going away? And they said, no, this is absolutely important and is going to be a continued priority. It's just a matter of time before we start seeing these requirements in solicitations this year and next. So just to recap, we want to make sure we have understanding of FCI and CUI. And the CUI is really where this program focuses, is protecting that kind of data. You won't really know if you have CUI unless the government tells you. So a lot of clients, a lot of government contractors that we talk to, they're kind of scratching their head because they say, we don't have CUI. And often they don't have CUI unless it's labeled as such. If it's provided to them by the government and marked CUI, you technically don't really have it. Now you might be handling stuff that should be labeled CUI, but the government is still actually internally training their staff, training the contracting officers to understand these terms and start marking the appropriate contract information. So a lot of this goes back to the losses and damage and harm to our country's intelligence and war fighters. There's an estimated $600 billion lost annually in intellectual property. The similarities here between the F-35 and the Chinese J-31 are remarkable. And based on the report from DoD and other sources, they believe this information was assembled through hacking into the contractor supply chain, the companies that are doing work for the government. And it may not seem like much, but you might have a 1 or 2 person company working out of their basement that might have schematics for some component of these types of things. It's not secret level, it's lower than that. But when those pieces are stolen and assembled, you come away with some very interesting cloned technology. So the timeline, we started with the executive order way back when, and we're not going to go into depth on all of these regulations. I just want you to see there's been a progression over time. And in the FAR clause, which most of you probably heard of, if you have a government contract, you probably are subject to the FAR. Well, way back in 2016, FAR 52.204 was put in play. And what that clause says is you must have, as a contractor, basic safeguards, basic cybersecurity in place to play ball with the government. And so shortly thereafter, Department of Defense also followed that and said, and if you are a DoD contractor, we have additional special rules that you need to follow. And that's where DFARS 252.204 7012 came out. So there was an evolution there. And so on until we get to today and we have the CMMC program. I haven't even told you what the CMMC stands for yet. Those are the key regulations I want to keep in mind. And I'll be happy to share this slide deck to provide to you all if you'd like to follow along later or look at the resources inside. So CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. And really all that means is you have to get a certificate that proves you are doing these things that you have already had in your contract this whole time. And a lot of companies didn't realize that. There's a lot of misunderstanding that CMMC is some newfangled additional requirement, and it's not. It's merely an accountability tool to ensure the contracting community is actually following through with their commitments to these cybersecurity requirements. So as I mentioned, FAR 52 put in place 15 safeguards, and that's to protect the FCI that we talked about earlier. And then DFARS was put in place for the DoD contract holders to protect CUI. There's a lot more work to do there. There's 110 requirements and 320 objectives spread across those requirements. And now we're here today, they're releasing the 7021 DFARS clause, or we call it the CMMC clause, which just states you must have a certification proving that you're doing these things at the time you get your contract, if you want to have a contract with DoD. This was all rolled out through the Undersecretary Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. I believe they've renamed now to DoD CIO. And this is a mechanism to map back to all of the requirements in the NIST framework, which is a separate government agency that created a very thoughtful step-by-step way of evaluating your cybersecurity in your company. So DoD is like leveraging what's already there. DoD says, hey, use this checklist, do these things. We will know then that you're having a minimum baseline of security for doing work with us. There is the final rule that was passed into law December of last year. And barring an act of the president and Congress that would retroactively pull that, this is actually in effect, and we will start to see CMMC requirements in solicitations. It is worth noting that these requirements are expanding outside of DoD. In fact, GSA is announced that they were going to start adopting the framework and requiring it. There's a proposed rule for the FAR that was put out a few weeks ago that they're going to be looking at adopting the same security requirements as well. And even state and federal, state and banking institutions are looking to adopt this as well. I go to a lot of conferences and events, and this one I took a picture of. I really appreciated the hierarchy of authorities and tracing way back to even before the executive order, FSMA of 2003. I don't need to put you to sleep with this long list here. The idea I wanted to get across was until this is actually passed into law, the 7021, you'll notice it's crossed out at the moment. Until that is passed, we are still waiting for the actual mechanism for the contractors to report and get their certification. That's the last piece that we're waiting on. So to recap, those clauses we just looked at in a nutshell, those are the government saying you need to protect this critical information, and there's different levels of security that are required based on the kind of information, the kind of data. And another key takeaway is that CMMC isn't adding anything new, it's just an accountability mechanism that we have to go through and prove that we're doing the things we say we do. I just want to take a moment to breathe. Is anyone unsure at this point what we're covering? Any questions before I continue? I want to make sure we have a baseline understanding before we get into more technical nuts and bolts. And even just a thumbs up if everyone could just give me a little interaction, let me know if you are tracking, that would be great. Okay, thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. Okay, no other questions at the moment. We'll continue then. So CMMC has 3 levels in the 2.0 version that was released a couple of years ago. In the initial rollout, they were proposing 5 levels, but it was too complicated and it didn't align well with the NIST framework. So they changed it, they simplified it, and they brought it down to these 3 areas. So the very basic at the bottom, level 1, foundational, there's 17 practices. And this is for companies that do not deal with CUI. They only deal with federal contract information, FCI. They are not subject to the additional higher requirements in level 2. If you are a contractor or working with a contractor that does handle CUI, that's the line in the sand. That's where you automatically are going to be subject to the level 2 of CMMC and have to align with all of the 110 controls in the NIST framework that DoD says you need to follow. So it's estimated some 200,000 companies or more will fall into that bucket of level 2. And level 3 is going to be a much smaller number of companies. It's estimated to be somewhere, I think, in the 5 to 10,000. And these are companies like Boeing and Lockheed, CACI, and the like, the much larger organizations. It's the same premise. You have to do all of the NIST framework plus additional controls on top. It's very important to understand the scoping for a company when we're talking about CMMC. A lot of organizations don't understand they don't have to worry about extreme costs for their entire organization. They need to try and limit the scope of where their CUI data is stored, transmitted, or processed. If they can limit that and restrict it to a small space, that reduces the footprint of that data, that reduces the cost and time to secure and manage it. And in the CMMC program, they even have terms now called an enclave. And an enclave is, you can think of it almost like a mud room, if you will, in your house. That's where the mud needs to stay. We don't want that mud to spread around your whole house. Similar idea with the CUI. You don't want the CUI data flowing throughout your entire company. It should be limited and restricted to only those people who need it. This is a color-coded map of all of the controls in the NIST framework, which is what CMMC is assessing against. And you'll notice that a lot of these are orange, which I've labeled administrative. And those are things like policies and procedures, documentation. I estimate a good 30 to 40% of the work when doing a security framework like NIST and CMMC is documentation, and having it up to date and maintained is very important. Without that, an assessor can't come in and understand your company. They can't actually ask you the right questions. They can't look at evidence for stuff that they don't know. And then the rest of the requirements are a smattering of technical control, software, hardware, security, configurations, and then a lot of work that people have to do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. And so those tasks are actually needing to be tracked and monitored and reported on. So to recap on some of these things, there are about 35 to 40% of these things are documents. And then there's another 35% are tools and systems that need to meet certain standards of security as well. You can't just get any old tool or software for your company to have CUI or protect CUI. It needs to meet certain standards. And FedRAMP is one of the ways that the government and assessors like to see. It's a faster way, it's a easier way to assess that. We're going to talk in more depth here soon on the different domains, and I'm going to give you some examples of what that looks like. So for any good CMMC management program, we highly recommend having some sort of tool to track everything. They're called GRC tools. And you can use a spreadsheet if you want to. I did that for many years in Health and Human Services. Spreadsheets are wonderful tools, but it can become very, very onerous, very burdensome to maintain a spreadsheet and multiple tabs and manually updating and tracking status columns. So having a good tool is recommended, and there's lots of good tools out there. But it helps you see at a bird's eye. Where are you at? Which controls are you passing? Which controls are you failing? Which ones are in progress? So let's take a look at an example. What do one of these look like? We're going to look at access control as a domain, and we're going to look at 3.1.7. And so you'll notice up here at the top, we have the name, privileged functions, and we have a description. And it reads, prevent non-privileged users from executing privileged functions and capture that execution of such functions in audit logs. That's a long-winded way of saying, don't let non-administrators do admin things and track admin things in a log somewhere. And this is something to bear in mind with this framework and many other security frameworks, ISO and others. They generally don't give you a very specific explanation of what to do. They just tell you at a high level, this is the thing we need to see from you. You as the organization can determine what makes sense for your business and how you're going to accomplish that requirement. Now, it's not enough just to read that sentence and go off to the races. There are specific objectives that must be met for each of these controls to be satisfied and to actually get a passing score on this particular control. So in this example, we have 4 objectives that need to be met. The first says privileged functions are defined, non-privileged users are defined, non-privileged users are prevented from executing privileged functions, and the executions are captured in a log. So it's important to understand this because there are lots of companies out there and tools out there that don't always ask the objectives. They may just ask you the top level question and get you a false sense of security that you check, do that one thing. No, that's not how DoD expects it. They're using the NIST 800-171A assessment guide, and these are the objectives right out of that document from the government. And so we need to ensure as we're going through an assessment and asking these questions that we're meeting all of those granular requirements. The assessor is also going to ask to see evidence that this is being done. That can be in the form of screenshots, that can be in the form of interviews, and that can be in the form of actually going on site and looking over people's shoulders, in fact. And so that's generally how we would go through all of these controls, all of these questions. And once you have satisfied all these and have evidence uploaded, you are ready to talk to an assessor. You're ready to have them come in, evaluate you, and give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Obviously, you want that thumbs up, because if you don't get your certification and you can't keep your contract with DoD. A little pro tip here, some keywords to look out for throughout CMMC and NIST framework. And if you see these words, your brain can immediately go to, oh, I know what that means. So if you see the words identified, defined, assigned, authorized, specified, developed, that's all referring to a document. Anytime you see that word defined, you should immediately be thinking, oh, I need to have an actual document or a spreadsheet or a list that specifies how we do this and what we're doing. I can't emphasize enough the criticality of documentation. Without it, they won't even come in and assess you. You're not ready. And I know documentation is not necessarily the most entertaining and fun thing to do, but if you don't do it, you don't have anything to be assessed. It's just the Wild West and tribal law, and nobody knows where anything is, and that's not a mature way to secure a business. These other words on the right, controlled, limited, tracked, approved, all of these are action words. So they're going to be looking for evidence that those things are actually being done. And these are actions either of a system or a user or both. And that needs to be corresponding to the documentation. It's important that the thing you're doing matches the thing that you said in your document. That would be a major red flag for an assessor when it doesn't line up. And when going for an assessment to get your certification, it's important that all of the key stakeholders are well prepared and they know their stuff very well. So when they're being interviewed, they don't come across as like this is the first time they've ever heard of this and they're just reading off of a script. They really need to understand and implement this. It's a cultural thing that the entire company would be living and breathing. Here's an example of a list as far as implementing controls and making sure that all of these requirements are being done. Have a spreadsheet to track or a tool to track that you're doing all of these things and know where things live, whether that's in SharePoint or if it's in Dropbox, wherever it is, having kind of a roadmap to all of the specific documents and items that are required so that you can keep track of that. This is a redacted example of one of the things in access control that asks for an authorized device list. Well, what does that mean? It means that your company has done an inventory and keeps a track record of all your equipment. That includes your laptops, your desktops, your printers, your routers, your switches, your smartphones, if they're being used for company use. And that's so important because that will help you scope your assessment and show the assessor, okay, these people, these devices here are in scope, these touch CUI, and these ones over here do not. And you can show them clearly where that line is and direct their focus where it needs to be. It's also very useful for a lot of other purposes, not the least of which is tracking your hardware and warranties and knowing when is a good time to replace the hardware, etc. And maybe for tax purposes and depreciation, it's great to have all this in a list somewhere. Now, I want to emphasize too, just a checklist approach won't work. It's not a simple matter of just going down a list, because while yes, a lot of these things are technical in nature, there's a lot of things that overlap with training and education, personnel. These are not IT requirements. These are people requirements that require your involvement, your leadership teams. It requires bringing HR to the table. And so it's really a holistic program. Yes, a lot of this is technology, but a good amount of it is making sure you have a cultural buy-in as to the why we're doing this and getting a understanding from your team, which is the best way ultimately to secure any entity, is training your people. You can spend a lot of money, a lot of time putting in Fort Knox grade security, but if one person in the company clicks on the wrong phishing link and lets the bad guy in through the back door, it just destroys all that money and work. So investing in your people is key. So everyone ultimately is accountable. as far as ensuring your company's security. And Department of Defense understands that we have a year now. It's 2025. They're giving us a grace period to get our act together in the DIB community, to do our own self-assessments, to get the ball rolling, because next year, 2026, is when they're saying they're going to require the certification. So as you're evaluating your company and looking at the bigger picture, if you're a consultant, if you're helping engineer and architect a solution for a client or for your current company, these are some things I would advise you to look at, because these are so critical. If these aren't being done, it's not even worth asking to get assessed at this point. So number one, FIPS validated encryption. This is important because there are technologies and websites that use FIPS compliant encryption, but that's not the same thing as validated. The CMMC and NIST requirements are very clear. It has to be validated, meaning it was tested by the NIST labs and is published on the NIST website that this meets the standard of security. Now, for all of those encryption nerds out there, we all know that FIPS 140-2 is becoming a little obsolete. By the time this is even in effect, we may be needing to upgrade to a higher level of encryption, because the bad guys are figuring it out. And with AI and quantum computing on the horizon, I am concerned that these older standards of encryption are just not sufficient. We're still playing catch up, in other words. That being said, it is a requirement and companies will need to show for it. Number two is baseline configuration. A lot of folks don't have that. It's important to have your documents show this is how our computers are set up. This is the image we use. This is how our firewall is deployed and backed up. All of that needs to be shown for. Providing evidence that maintenance and patching are happening on a regular basis and antivirus is being managed. A lot of small companies will often have people bring their own devices, which is fine. It's budget friendly. It's morale boosting. You might even have, your CEO comes in with his MacBook, right? The challenge is if you don't have those devices under management and maintenance, there's no way of knowing for sure what's happening on those computers or ensuring that data is not being stolen or malware is running. And so those things have to be taken into account. Any changes need to be approved and tracked from an IT perspective. Good change management is something the assessors are going to be looking at. So that would be a documented meeting with approvals or denials of when something's going to be updated, including firmware. You'll need to show that you have evidence around any sort of major security change for the company, or maybe you're deploying a new Wi-Fi system. All of that type of thing needs to be tracked. And then the last thing is your IT company, your managed service provider, and the tools that they're using, they also need to show that they are compliant or equivalent. And that's a harder thing to do when we're all small companies trying to help one another. This is a large ask for IT companies to provide that level of compliance and security. And a lot of IT companies shy away from it. They'll do the basics, but they may not want to touch with a 10-foot pole all of these additional requirements. What would it take to get certification if your company or your client was looking to do so? This is just a rough sketch of how that might look. Generally speaking, it takes about a week to do a full gap analysis of the company, depending on their size and locations and employees. But generally speaking, a gap analysis can be done in 1 to 2 weeks. Once that gap analysis has been done, you now have to make a plan to fix all the gaps. So that can take anywhere from 3 to 6 months or more. Generally plan for more because of life and challenges and schedule delays and the rest. Once you believe you've got all those gaps remediated, do a pre-assessment internally, review everything, have your ducks in a row and all your evidence and documentation lined up. And then you can have a certified third-party assessment organization, C3PAO is what they're called. It's a very interesting acronym. You have to have them come in and assess you. They're the third party that comes in, and you have to pay for that too. They come in and they review your controls, and they'll give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. If you get your thumbs up, you will get your recommendation to the DoD Cyber AB, and you will receive your certification. That can take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks or more. And yay, you're compliant, and you can play ball, and you can get a DoD contract or keep the DoD contract that you have. It should be noted there is an estimated 6-month backlog right now for receiving a certification. And credit on this slide goes to Summit 7. They're a thought leader in this space. I highly recommend their blog and website. But this is just to give you an idea of everybody's waiting to the last minute to proceed with their certification, dragging their feet. It makes sense. Don't spend money that you don't have to until you have to, right? The problem is there's way, way more companies that need to get certified, thousands, than there are available companies to assess them and help them get their certification. So we have a bit of a bottleneck here. So even if a company signed up today, it's likely they wouldn't be able to get assessed until later this year at the earliest right now. This presents a supply chain challenge, obviously, because if the DoD is expecting CMC requirements in 2026, hard requirements, there's going to be a smaller number of companies that can provide that certification at this current rate. Now, that being said, things are getting better. There are more C3PAOs coming into existence and getting trained and paying their dues and all the rest. These are some technical solutions just for the curious minds out there. What kinds of things need to be put in place to meet these requirements from a technical level? There is no hard and fast, you must use this or that. You just have to ensure that whatever tool you use, it meets the requirements. So you probably have heard of Duo. It's a 2-factor company. You've probably heard of Sentinel, Microsoft Sentinel. These are tools that we can find and obtain through Microsoft, and wherever possible, it's great if you can get things under a single company. And even CISA has been providing services for free to help the community with certain things like DNS filtering and vulnerability scanning. And this is a service the government is providing to contractors who are eligible, who are DoD contractors, to help us out because this costs time and money, and they're trying to make this a little bit easier. So when you're reaching out, ask your consultant, ask your IT provider, are they certified? Do they have the training? Do they have the expertise, and can they show for that? Do they have a past performance history? Have they provided you a clear offering and a roadmap that shows you how they're going to get you compliant? And will those results come to fruition? Can they prove that to you? I will also say, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. There's a lot of companies out there today that are pandering one-stop shop, and you can get everything you need with our $25 per month subscription. It's just not realistic. There are some controls that those technologies will satisfy, but it doesn't satisfy the whole picture. I have a lot of free resources for anybody who's interested in getting into this further. The first is actually a self-assessment tool that I built on my daughter company's website, Mission Compliant. So if you or a colleague or a friend needs to go through and do a gap assessment, we have built a tool completely free to go through, answer all the questions, and understand where your gaps are. It also gives you what's called an SPRS score, which is a score that the government requires DoD contractors to upload into their system every year. That's another DFARS requirement. Also listed here, you can go straight to the DoD's website and get more information about CMMC. They have a wealth of knowledge there. They have FAQs. They have free scoping guides and PDFs to understand what the requirements are and how to address them. My personal favorite is this Ultimate CMMC Documentation Archive. It was a tool that was provided to us when we went through training for CCP. It's got probably a good 200 links on there to all kinds of historical and current government publications and regulations, and shows the history of how this whole program came to be and where it's going now. That pretty much wraps up. I do have about 10 minutes. If there's anyone who has questions or just curious, wants to learn anything else, I'm happy to answer any that you might have.
Hi, Scott. This is Gary Thomas. I have a question for you.
Hi, Gary.
Yeah, this sort of reminds me of the software, I guess, maturity models from maybe 10, 15 years ago. That sort of
SDLC and the
leveling.
like.
Yeah, it just sort of reminds me of that stuff.
Gary, you just cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I was saying that this sort of reminds me of the software maturity models from maybe a decade and a half ago. What are your thoughts on that? Over.
Thank you. Great question. Yeah, it is similar. The general spirit is, hey, we need to do better. We need to build security into how we work. And in the case of software development, it's the same. Rather than security being an afterthought that's bolted on later and we have all these vulnerabilities that could be exploited, it's a similar concept and it's on a parallel track. And in fact, the NIST publication, there are several that deal with secure software development, and some that are recently passed into regs that will affect contracting, just the same as CMMC. So it's the same kind of idea, Gary. Very much appreciate that observation. And I do think even within CMMC, there's specific language around if you do software development, you're expected to meet those standards that you just referenced. So thank you for that. Great point. I see Mary has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I may have missed it. However, once a company receives that certification, what is the cycle for recertification?
Thank you for that, Mary. I actually don't think I mentioned that specifically. It might have been in the graphic. It's every 3 years, triennial. So yeah, it's not a once and done. It's an ongoing program where you maintain and continue to practice those security controls in your business. And it makes sense, right? The notion is we're not just putting in a software and walking away. We're constantly being vigilant and evolving. And as our companies and people come and go, those security controls have to continue alongside of that growth and change. And they will want to see that track record too. The assessor expects to see meeting notes and meeting minutes and action items from these types of activities. And that's another thing that small organizations need help. I think they need at least a little bit of coaching or templates to do those types of meetings and keep that program going. But wonderful question. Thank you. Any other questions?
Scott, you had mentioned. I'm sorry, I'm calling you Scott. Is it Nathan? Is it your first name, Nathan?
You know, I have 3 first names, Nathan, James, Scott. So, you call me whichever one. That'll be fine.
Okay. So you had mentioned a bottleneck that there was not enough companies that have the certification, but we know that this is coming down the pipe for contracting. The companies need to have this certification. Will that produce, I guess, opportunities for partnerships between companies to build their teams more with a company that has this kind of certification? Over.
That's a great question. Great point. I do think so. I think larger orgs that have more resources and capability will probably work with subs. They're going to need to do the sub contracting regardless, and they are better positioned to create those enclaves that I mentioned earlier, and they can then pass those enclaves onto their subs so that they can inherit some of that burden for the subcontractor. So partnering, I think, will happen a lot, and we are seeing that already. I think it's a very common practice in contracting land already to see joint ventures and alliances and things like that. The trick is going to be when the assessor comes, you have to prove to the assessor the COI is being safeguarded, and you have to show where the boundary is. And if you're going to take that burden and allow for other partners to work with you, you still have to prove that that CUI is restricted and locked down and only specific people can get to it, etc. Another way of thinking about it, you have government furnished equipment. A lot of contractors have a contract and they just get a government computer, and it comes with a PIV card and a VPN, and it's separate from everything else they do. It's a similar idea. A larger prime in partnership with this sub could supply that sub a computer and security and segregate everything.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome. And Gary, Senya put a really great note in the chat. She had mentioned CMMI, Carnegie Mellon, and Carnegie Mellon actually developed CMMC originally as well. So that might be what you were alluding to earlier as well.
Thank you so much.
Well, without further ado, I'll turn it back over to the leadership team. I'm super grateful for being present to you all tonight. Thank you for having me. And who would be the best person to send the slides to for distribution to the group?
You can send it to contact@INCOSEWMA.org.
Thank you so much, Dr. Luanda. I will do that.
Well, we thank you for this wonderful presentation, allowing us to get some insight and understanding of CMMC. And hopefully we can take this back to our companies and agencies and see how we can improve with regards to cybersecurity.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Right. And so moving right along, we just have a couple slides left to provide some information. Our next large INCOSE event is the INCOSE Symposium that is scheduled for July 28th through the 31st. I'm sorry, July 26th through the 31st. And it will be held in Ottawa, Canada. Please take a look at the INCOSE website for more detailed information. It is a worthwhile event to attend if you've never been to one of the workshops that INCOSE provides. To my knowledge, there are two main or major events, and the INCOSE workshop took place earlier this year in Seville, Spain. And so the next is this event coming up in Canada. Do mark your calendars accordingly. And so lastly, just wanted to share what we are working on in terms of our membership, our board. We are looking to participate in the 2025 George Mason University Andrew P. Sage Systems Engineering Research competition that is coming up. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we will be sending out information to engage those that are interested in preparing for CEP certification exams. We have preparation courses in connection with Texas chapter. And then also, as we have also mentioned, we are looking to start student chapters with Howard University, Morgan State University, and the University of Maryland coming up in Q3. And then if there's anyone that has just a few hours here and there to help on any one of the committees that we have to help us with regards to carrying out the mission to share systems engineering, help those early career system engineers. Please feel free. Here are our committees listed here. Feel free to reach out to any of the members, chair members actually, and let us know what you'd like to do to help carry this chapter forward. Thank you all so much for participating and joining our call this evening. And our next monthly meeting will be May 14th. Please mark your calendars, and we look forward to chatting with you more then. And have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you
evening.
all.
Thank you.
Good night.